For those that would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, let's go ahead and do that now.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Good evening. Welcome to a almost sunny regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. It's pretty cool to have us be so light out. The time is 7:03 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Here.
Trustee Cranker.
Here.
Trustee Harper.
Here.
Trustee Vierman.
Here.
Trustee George.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Mayor Furman.
Here.
All trustees in attendance.
Thank you. Do we have any staff report revisions to this evening's agenda?
We do have one staff revision. I would like to rescind the request for executive session tonight and schedule a work session soon to discuss our current development constraints and have the board prioritize how we can move forward. So I need the board's permission to remove this from the agenda.
Any objections? No. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. So now we'll open up for public comment. We do not have any in-person attendees, so we'll go straight to Zoom. Please click the raise hand button and Matt will promote you to panelist. And I do see one raised hand already. If anyone else would like to speak, please click the raise hand button as well.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can.
I'm not sure
Sorry, Melody, would you just introduce yourself real quick?
I'm sorry, Melody Skinner. I'm not sure what Warren Ryder will present to you, but I'm wondering if it'd be possible for me to get on one of the committees and participate. I definitely think we need to have Silverton, San Juan County voices there. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any other comments at this time, so we'll go ahead and close this public comment and move on to item 3A on our agenda, which is presentations and proclamations, Animas River Plan presented by Warren Ryder, the Animas Watershed Partnership Coordinator, and Warren's joining us on Zoom. Welcome, Warren. Thank you so much for taking the time to give this presentation to us this evening.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for giving me a little bit of time. I wish I could be there in person. I'm fighting a cold brought home by a 3.5-year-old, and I'm not sure your roads are great yet, but next time I'd like to be there in person with all of you. So thank you very much. And Melody, stick around and you can hear what we're talking about and what's going on, and hopefully we can get you on board as well to join the conversation. As you noted, I'm the coordinator for the Animas Watershed Partnership. I also have a hydrology business based out of Durango that I've run for about 7.5 years now, but been doing this for about almost 25, and done a fair bit of work on the Bonita Peaks work up there. So pretty familiar with your neck of the woods. What I'm not overly familiar with is the sort of the political players and who should be at the table when we start talking about how the rivers and streams function throughout the Animas Basin. So I wanted to take this opportunity, and I sent over a short presentation that we can run through. I don't know, I haven't attended one of your meetings before, so I'm not exactly sure what your method is, but I can either pull it up on my screen, share a screen, or you guys can pop it up and I can say next slide, however that works. But I wanted to talk to you about a planning effort that we've started thinking about. And we're sort of in the very beginning phases, and it's important to us that everybody's at the table that wants to be at the table as we move forward with the conversations of to plan or not to plan, and if we do, how big. So with that, I can kind of introduce you to what we're working on through the presentation, and then I can take questions from anyone and criticisms, questions, whatever you've got for me.
And Warren, you can share your screen and go through the slides.
Okay, let me just.
Thank you, so our viewers can see.
Yeah, no worries. Let me just put this in presentation mode. All right, can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this first phase is really a pre-planning phase. And what we're doing is trying to generate a plan. I'll back up a little bit and then skip over it in the later slides. So basically in 2015, the state of Colorado in their water plan, which has recently been updated to a new 2023 version, but in 2015, one of the goals in that plan was for communities to develop what they termed stream management plans. And I apologize to those of you that already know how these work. But ultimately what they are is community and stakeholder driven planning efforts to look at what a river system needs from an ecological health standpoint and from a recreational standpoint. It's not designed to dive into water quality. It's not looking at, where you can and can't build. It's really about how is our river currently functioning? What does it need to address ecological function going forward and recreational needs and desires going forward based on what we have in place today. And so since 2015, a bunch of communities around Colorado have jumped on this bandwagon and started developing these plans. They can be enormous watershed scale-based plans. They can be reach-based plans that only look at the low-hanging fruit where we know there are already problems, and address those. And ultimately what you're doing at the end of the plan, if you undertake one, is identifying strategies, projects, different things that stakeholders in the community have identified through previous studies, previous plans, whatever it is, bring it all into one place saying, okay, when we have another 15-year drought, how do we address low flows for the recreation community? Or, when this diversion is happening, how do we do a stream bank restoration project that we know our riparian area is going to ecologically continue to function? And it gives us strategies and things like that. So they're data-driven processes. We look at the hydrology, we look at the biology, and as all of you know, more than enough data has been collected over the decades in our basin to really inform this process well. But ultimately, if we were to develop a plan, and no decision has been made about whether we develop one for the animus or not, or how big it would be or how small it would be, it's really stakeholders within the basin that decide both of those things, how big it is, and what are the attributes within our basin that we actually care about protecting or enhancing. So what are we doing right now? We're developing this work group and a stakeholder group. So there's a smaller working group that continues to grow as people get involved. And then a much larger stakeholder group that I think at the last meeting, it went out to 230 people. Now, that many people didn't show up, of course, they never do, but we've identified that many stakeholders who have said, yeah, I want to know about this and I want to be informed. We contracted with Mountain Studies Institute, Scott Roberts, to do a data gaps analysis, just a very initial, what kind of work has been done in the past, and looking at that, can we identify some places where we haven't done enough to just inform this pre-planning process? And then if these groups, the work group and the stakeholder group, the larger stakeholder group, decide, we do want to move forward with the planning effort. At that point, they would say, okay, Warren, write up a scope of work so that we can then put that out to the world of contractors, communities, everything else to say, okay, how are we going to actually approach the development of a plan? There's, as you all also know, there's a lot of opportunity to get things done on the ground over the next 3, 4, 5 years. given the money that's out there. And so these plans also set the stage for future prioritization within communities and river basins to do projects that are of value to the stakeholders within those communities. So I kind of told you a little bit about the history, but I'll kind of show you this is the history that we went through. So just so you know, there have been conversations going on about maybe doing this for 3 or 4 years. And then there was the pandemic. So that slowed everything down. But a year and a half ago or so, at least a few stakeholders said, you know what, let's sort of shake the bushes a little bit and see if people want to do this. And the general consensus was, well, let's find out. And so that's where we are today. We applied for funding about this time last year, I guess we applied. And of course, with the state of Colorado, didn't receive it and didn't start working on it until late summer, starting to think about how we wanted to go about evaluating whether we wanted to develop a plan going forward. So we're sort of in this, interview phase, stakeholder engagement phase, finding out who cares, who doesn't, but making sure that we invite all the right people so that they have the opportunities to say yes or no. And Scott Roberts and his team have started that data gaps analysis, just pulling community reports together, scientific studies together, everything that we can that people tell us is out there, so that he can develop sort of that bibliography and gaps analysis of where we've overstudied and where we really haven't studied enough to understand how the basin works. The process you see here is on the right, this sort of wheel shaped thing. We only have funding to go through about 1.5, kind of from 12 o'clock to 1:30 on this. So there's really because we haven't decided as a community of sort of people who care about their river, whether to move forward with the planning effort yet or not. We have only received funding for the first part, to establish stakeholders and evaluate the level of interest in a planning effort. So that's kind of where we are. If we were to go through the whole process, it would, these kind of 4 bullets on the left would kind of signify where you would take this. Get the stakeholders involved, identify our values and objectives. Then you start really digging into the data to assess, where does the river basin need help? Where does it not need help? And then looking at projects and other conditions that we can help support those values that we've identified. And then prioritizing different management strategies and actions to maintain or improve what we've already got. And then the purpose of the stakeholder outreach, you guys have a million different stakeholder efforts going on in San Juan County and the town of Silverton. So I know you're probably overwhelmed with stakeholder efforts. And but it's really to make sure that whoever wants to be engaged is engaged. And it's really up to you. There are no hooks in these planning efforts. There are no regulatory drivers behind this. If the plan is written, nobody has to abide by it. And that's kind of the nice thing, is that it's really bringing our community members together and saying, what do we want to preserve? What do we want to enhance from an ecological and a recreational standpoint? And it's something we can refer to and grow upon in terms of protecting our rivers. And, with all of the different threats, you guys have different threats than downstream communities do, different historical impacts, different recreational uses, all of that. And this planning effort is, hopefully going to identify what each community and set of stakeholders care about the most. The Southern Ute Tribe is also working to get to the table right now through their processes, and they really want whatever plan, if one gets developed, for their stretch of the animus, they want it to be driven by them, and that's okay. But they want to be at the table and talk about whether we move forward. So in this process, one last little bit here. We hired Stacy Bowe. I don't know if any of you know of her, at Strategic by Nature to do interviews. of individual stakeholders across different sectors of these communities that are, within the Animas Basin, or small group interviews with different industry groups. So, OHV groups or fly fishing groups or raft guiding groups. Often were done in smaller group interviews because the perspective tended to be similar. She did most of those through the end of the year last year and is still trying to find folks in communities that we weren't able to connect to or haven't identified folks yet. That includes you. So if there are folks that you can help us identify that should be part of this conversation, maybe Melody's one, I don't know her. But Peter Butler also had some good ideas for a couple of Silverton folks. But it's not my job to identify those people. It's my job to identify the folks who will know the right people to have at the table. And I think we're starting with that tonight, hopefully. And just really to grab a broad geographic reach within our basin. I will tell you that right now, of the people who want to develop a plan, most of them feel like it should be a watershed scale rather than a reach scale. Which makes it all the more important for us to have Silverton engaged and at the table in whatever that looks like, if you want to be. So that's kind of it. I probably didn't answer a single question anybody had, so that's what I hopefully can do now. So if folks have questions, please ask.
Yeah, I have a question. So you're the Animas Watershed Partnership. What overlap do you have with the Animas River Stakeholders Group, which has been in formation for like 25 years?
Yeah. So they've coexisted for about the same amount of time. The Watershed Partnership started out as the nutrient working group down here. And then quickly morphed into the Animas Watershed Partnership. And they kind of worked side by side for a long time with, ARSG working in their mining impact related work up high and AWP working sort of Baker's Bridge down. And we've always worked really well together. And, now with ARSG sort of morphing into the CAG or something, however you want to define that, the landscape has certainly changed. I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse to not have ARSG up there as active as they were for so long. I still work very closely with Peter. He has attended the couple of meetings that we've had around this project so far. And, they've generated a lot of the data that will ultimately help inform this process. This wasn't something that AWP spearheaded, just so you know. This was, oh my gosh, conversations of the Basin Roundtable and Animas Watershed Partnership and John Ott, before his passing, talking about, should we develop one of these plans to start understanding what we need to do to protect the river. And about a year and a half ago, when they said, yeah, let's gauge interest in the community, I just kind of raised my hand and said, well, I'd be willing to lead it from an AWP perspective. And Gigi Richard at the college, before she left, she also said, well, if Warren doesn't end up doing it, we'll do it out of the college too. So just so you know, it wasn't something that we spearheaded. It was really something we volunteered to take on because we think it's important to look at the river from a sort of a quantity perspective rather than a quality perspective. That's a long-winded answer to your ARSG AWP question, but
no, thanks. That was a great answer. And I also think you had said that you were trying to find out who all the stakeholders were, but at the last Animas River Stakeholders Group meeting I was at must have been 2 or 3 years ago, but the people in that room, if you could get a copy of the roster of the interested parties in that room, that might save you a lot of time. But
yeah, that's a great recommendation, and I can ask Peter for that. What other questions do folks have? We've got, we have another meeting planned for late, sort of end of, what month are we in? End of March, and another one at the end of April. To dive more deeply into sort of, do we move forward with a plan? What should a scope be? What should the scale be? What are the attributes of interest to people throughout the basin? And I'd sure love to have some Silverton representation if possible.
Quick question. To what extent are municipalities involved, as opposed to, just individuals located, that reside in different municipalities?
Well, we hope that you're involved extensively. I mean, we know that the town of Silverton has done a lot of work looking at your river corridor, water supply, everything that comes with it. So I think when we start looking at questions around ecological health and function and flows within those streams from a recreational standpoint, you guys should have a lot of interest, in my opinion. You don't have to be involved at all if you don't want to be, but at least at this point, City of Durango is involved. La Plata County is to some extent involved, although they're dealing with, the reps down here are dealing with our local homeless problem more extensively than they are with river health. Just a little more pressing and critical, I think, at the moment. And then again, Southern Ute Tribe is involved. So yeah, to whatever extent you feel like there's interest in the town in terms of what kind of recommendations might come out of a plan, or what kind of, river related attributes might be included that are of importance to the town. Or even if they're just reports, if you say, look, we've already studied this to death, please make sure that what we've already done is incorporated into the plan. If that's enough for the town, then we'll make sure that happens.
Great. I just had a quick couple of follow-ups. Sorry, Sally.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Based on what you anticipate, like who's an ideal participant? It sounds like anyone who has interest, you'd welcome to participate, but are there particular people who have experience in certain areas that would be especially helpful? And then two follow-ups to that I think are part of the same question, is like, what's that commitment look like for people that want to participate, and how do they best get involved?
Yeah, I mean, yes, to your first question, anybody who wants to be involved can be. Like I said earlier, we have a working group and a stakeholder group. And so generally on the working group, and it's open, the working group's open to anyone, but ultimately what it's sort of shaped up to be are community members who have some background in hydrology, ecology, forest health, water quality, wildlife. That tends to be the folks who are willing to spend some time on issues like this. Anybody who wants to do that can. And then the stakeholder group is really anyone who, you guys are not a lot different than Durango, where the river, for you guys, two different water bodies that flow almost right through town. One that does. They're big amenities for our communities. And so it brings in all kinds of folks, right? So it's anyone, but ideally from a working group perspective, it's people with passion, but it's tended to sort of drag in the ologists like myself that come to the table. And then what kind of commitment, to answer that question? So we're trying to not overload people. So right now we're doing one meeting per month. We think there will only be the March and the April meeting, although at the last meeting, we thought we might need one more to add on sometime before, if we move forward with a plan, we will probably need one more meeting for really to hammer out the scope of work to develop the plan. And then beyond that, I haven't developed one of these plans before. So what the commitment looks like once you're developing a plan, I have no idea. Probably a little bit more intense at times and a lot less intense at times, but monthly 2 to 3 hour meetings is all we're asking people right now. And then Stacy, who has been sort of developing all the documentation in the background, she'll send out a little tickler saying, hey, anybody want to comment on this? And that's up to the stakeholders. If they want to shoot comments back, they can. If you don't have time, you don't. So it's really up to each individual as to how much they can or are willing to commit.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Warren, I'm so glad you came tonight. I think this is really important for the community to know about. And I think that the river, all aspects of it are certainly vital for people in Silverton, whether it's river health or recreation or, what you've mentioned. And so I think I'm grateful that you looked upstream and are talking to the room tonight, because I think this is a good way to connect and get local input. And I hope there are people who are out there that want to participate. I think even if we don't have people coming and sort of committing to that level of participation, potentially there's a structure or sort of a way to incorporate like briefings to this group, and we can disseminate information to the town. I do get I guess there's like a little discomfort, when I'm sort of experiencing when people are talking about plans that affect the community that kind of come from other places. And so it sounds like you're being really sensitive to that, but I think just, and then, there's no plan here. I recognize we're talking about a working group, so nothing to be worried about, but just making sure that the process is really clear and open so that the community kind of knows what's going on. I think will just be great to get people involved and then keep people up to date. And my question is, I know that the funding doesn't get us all the way around that wheel that you were showing us, but potentially if the wheel gets spinning and there's some momentum and a plan is created, or it seems like a good idea, or we start to study certain aspects of the Animas River watershed, is this a process that somehow leverages other funding or grant work or resources? What could we expect kind of coming out of the process that's more on the implementation side?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So as far as outcomes, every plan is different, of course. There's a really great website that's smpcolorado.org, which identifies all of the different stream management plans that have either been done or are in process at the moment, and you can pull them up and read about what they've done. Anyway, one of the things that's very common across all of them is that they identify on the ground projects that need to happen, that are driven by sort of stakeholder input and the science that communities have done over the years. So that's one thing. The other piece is it also can identify strategies for example, I was standing 2 years ago before John Ott passed away. I was standing on the bank of the Animas with him. And at that moment in time in the fall, the ditch that he ran was diverting 80 CFS, and the river below his ditch was running somewhere between 40 and 60. So they were, that canal was taking more than half of the flow of the river, which from an ecological standpoint, obviously isn't the best thing to do for the river. It doesn't change the water right structure, whatever, but is there a strategy to work with diverters like that to say, okay, when it's really bad and it's really dry, could we do something a little bit different? Maybe not, maybe so. Without infringing on water rights or asking anybody to give up anything, are there some strategies that we can identify? So those are kind of the two pieces that I think, and then you also get out of the plan process, hopefully identify stretches of the river that are in really great shape, that you say, okay, this is something we want to maintain. Do we have in place today what we need to maintain these stretches that we really love what they have going, whether it's from a riparian standpoint or a fisheries standpoint or whatever it might be. So you get to sort of, and the stakeholders ultimately help decide, what do we care about? What do we want to look at in the planning process? So a lot of that, Sally, is still to be determined. But ultimately they all will, develop some list of priority projects and attributes within different stretches of the river and different communities that they want to focus on. And then to answer your other question, yes, plans of any kind around the river are going to be required by the state of Colorado for their watershed restoration grant programs. So having a plan of some kind in place will benefit future funding opportunities through the state of Colorado. They're not specifying that it has to be a stream management plan, but they are specifying that a plan of some kind needs to be in place. And I know we have a couple down here that have been done prior to my time. But I worry that at some point they may say, well, it needs to be a stream management plan. Nobody said that. That's just my sense.
Right. Sure. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Warren, this is Dana. It's nice to meet you virtually, at least. We've emailed a time or two. I just want to say the presentation was really helpful, I think, for putting this in context for me and kind of what's happening. And I appreciated Tyler's question about like the Animas River stakeholder group. And I think my encouragement is just to, again, use the plans that we have in place, not saying that's where like the stakeholder engagement stops, but I know in our community, we've done a lot of planning and a lot of thinking and a lot of stakeholder engagement. And so capitalizing on what has gone before and the input that people have provided and the prioritization around recreation and restoration and use. So I think I sent to you and Scott the Animas River plan, the 2019 Trails plan. I think our Kendall RMPP is relevant here for kind of what we've proposed in there as a town for land use. And then our master plan speaks to this to a certain extent, but certainly using those as starting points. So I would hope that Scott would be looking at those and seeing kind of where's the overlap and where do we still need more input.
Yeah, I know that he is.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm, thank you. Is there a good way to, what's the best method outside of meeting with all of you folks of sort of reaching out and disseminating information to the town proper, so that I can keep everyone, any of you can reach out to me anytime and say, hey, I want to be at the table. That's great. But in terms of, just keeping the rest of the town and the board up to speed on what is happening, what's the best way to do that? What would you recommend?
And Warren, you can send those to me and I can include them in our meeting packets so that they're published, if that works for the board.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Gloria. You can send them to Gloria. Sorry, I'm not on the screen.
Great.
Well, and I know this is one extra layer, but even like the 5-minute check-ins, and we get this with various organizations throughout the community who sort of quarterly or annually show up and show their face. I think that's it's just helpful, keeps it real. It's not like a 52-page long email with like a report that we have to read. Right. Not that I'm opposed to reading 52-page long reports, just, to make it user-friendly.
It's a page a week, no problem.
And if you solve the way of how to engage people and a lot of people really effectively, just bottle that and sell it and let us know.
Yeah, well, if you haven't met Stacy, she's pretty amazing at bringing really great people of varying viewpoints to the table and getting them to talk. So it's been a learning experience for me in a nice way.
Wonderful. Any other trustee questions or comments? No. All right. Well, Warren, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for informing us, and we'll hopefully facilitate some good connections for the Animas Watershed Partnership. We look forward to hearing from you again soon.
That sounds great. Thank you all. Have a wonderful night.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the consideration to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If nobody has any comments or corrections.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis,
Yes.
trustee Crane,
yes.
trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is staff reports.
All right. So I wanted to schedule that work session. I was just waiting until staff reports. But was curious if we could schedule it sooner rather than later, and hoping perhaps maybe for next Monday or the following Monday before our meeting.
I'll be out of town on the 20th, but I can probably attend that. The 27th certainly would not be an issue for me.
I'm the flip flop of that. I'll
Me
be here the
too.
20th and not the 27th.
Right. I know we're right on spring break time here, aren't we?
Either.
Okay.
Yeah, either is good for me. The 27th is maybe slightly better, but it works either way.
Jim and Jeff. Is
I will be out traveling during spring break.
that for both the 20th and the 27th, or one or the other?
That's affirmative. Correct.
Okay, for both. Got it.
Okay.
Jeff?
And pre 6 o'clock is just tough for me in general right now. So I can see like both are options, but earlier in the afternoon is just kind of tough for me to make with work.
All right, it looks like I'm gonna have to do a little bit more digging, so expect an email or some calls tomorrow. And maybe we can get that scheduled. I also wanted to update the memo that I put in the packet regarding applying for congressional direct spending for the library renovation. We received an updated quote from Reynolds and Ash, and it was much lower than expected. So the cost was $1,152,000, which is significantly less than our estimated 1.6 million. And this makes our 25% match much easier to meet with the state historic funds. So we will not know, and with the Friends of the Library funds in there too. So we will not know if we are awarded these funds until August. But that was what the staff members for both Hickenlooper and Bennett found, that project, it had to be shovel ready. And they said that one would probably be the best fit for these funds. And it's not a formal grant process. It's more of a Google form that you fill out, and then it goes through committees and gets tacked onto a bill. So it's a long shot, but we tried. And then I have some good news that the GoCo grant that we received for the Kendall master planning process has reallocated funds of $38,890. That was approved to start working on some plans for that area. And what we're hoping for is the River Rock and Perimeter Trail. So this would be spent on surveying and legal alignment of the trail. And the grant has been extended as well. So that's also good news.
That's awesome.
And then there are staff reports in your packet if you have any questions.
I've received an increasing number of questions about the status of the OHV petition, and I understand that we're likely to get an update on the 27th at the next meeting, like a formal update. But the questions had to do with, has it been formally approved, and what is the protest period?
Yes, so the protest period, it's 40 days out from February 8th, so I believe that would be March. So March 17th would be the last day of the protest window, so that'd be this Friday.
Okay.
And it has been found sufficient as far as the signature verification goes. And also the deficiency that's found on the last go around has been corrected. So
Got it.
so basically, unless there's any protests filed by Friday, that will come in front of the board on the 27th.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to note also that normally in the winter, we get kind of like a mini bit of a reprieve from a town perspective, and everybody gets to put their head down and do a ton of work, anticipating kind of like all the public engagement and everything else that happens in the later spring and summer. And I think just based on where I'm sitting, it seems like staff has been going at like 190% the whole winter, with public works crew just absolutely working around the clock and crushing it and doing a really great job. And our planning department getting it from all angles and still doing a really great job keeping up with everything that's getting loaded on their plate. And Gloria navigating all of that and pulling all the strings and overseeing it. And Matt, managing all sorts of different types of audits and, keeping track of this OHV petition and other things like that. And I just want to commend all of the staff and all of the departments for really putting in a huge effort, and hopefully we're not burning you guys out as we get into our busy season. So thank you very much, and hopefully we find like a good pace that's sustainable.
Thank you.
Any questions or other feedback on trustee reports?
Staff reports.
I'm sorry. Yes, staff reports. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the next item of our agenda is trustee reports. Any things to note?
I was just going to note something I wanted to create a little bit of a trustee clarification. Just because we've had so much conversation lately around development and building and constraint maps and all of this. That's, I think, really exciting, but I just wanted to clarify that the property that the Barneys own, the Barney family property, is just at 1468 Bluff Street. There may have been some confusion. I think in the spirit of creating less confusion, that maybe we owned property somewhere else on the Shrine Hill, but the only property that we own in town is 1468. That's our house. And sort of on that note, after our last meeting, not after our last meeting, for a long time, I've been thinking about the development pressure in the planning department to-do list. And I think I actually saw this on a staff report, so I could have maybe mentioned this in staff reports, but I know that there's a lot that we need to talk about in terms of development, but something that keeps coming to the top for me is maximum square footage. And I don't know if there's a way to bring that to the top for us as trustees. I see that it's on staff reports, but it's not on our agenda. And yeah, I just wondered if it was something we could start talking about more publicly in meetings to just get going on some improvements to our codes. That's sort of something short of like the full code rewrite and revision, which I know is also underway. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of advocate for that discussion to make its way to the Board of Trustees.
Great, Sally, and I'll just do a quick response to that is that we do have that ordinance coming before the P&O committee on Thursday at 4 o'clock. We're having a personnel and ordinance committee.
I have one trustee, I guess, question. I know we had another power outage this weekend, and Deanne came and briefed us as the PIO about the previous issue. I was wondering if we had gotten any update from SMPA or Tri-State on what they're doing for maybe some sort of redundancy, or if we've heard from them. I know obviously our local guy is too busy trying to keep everything going. But I don't know if we can ask for somebody from their office to maybe help explain to us what they're doing to help us have more redundancy, or if that's something we can work for. But when the power goes out, I can tell you that in my other job, we get very busy, and it's really putting a lot of people in town at risk. So we need to do something. And maybe it's just a freak incidents one after the other, but I feel like we had some last summer that were pretty extended and long. And so just that's something that I would, I don't know if we can find out from them, maybe if they're working towards it, or if there's anything we can do to help them, or yeah.
Sure, I can invite Terry to a meeting and perhaps kind of talk through it if that would be okay. I know he invited,
go ahead.
Oh, he invited me to a micro, what is it called? Microgrid, yeah, webinar. It was actually during our power outage. So I wasn't able to attend, but I think they are working on some stuff. So I would love to get them in front of you all.
I like, Tyler, what you brought up last meeting too, of just like even the basic of an MOU in advance, right? So that we don't have to spend hours back and forth.
And anything we can do to help to make things easier. I mean, yeah, but it's been, we've been having some long weekends, so. Yes.
Just wanted to amend my comments on the OHV updates. I double checked the dates, and the protest window ends on March 20th. That's Monday at 20th.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Thank you. I was told that with regards to the power outage on Sunday, that it was done out of the safety. It was precautionary and for safety reasons. Because a large chunk of ice came down on top of a transformer and snapped one of the power poles. It was truly weather related is what I was told. And it was for the safety and well-being of the locals right there that were affected.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Anything else from trustees? Okay. Next item on our agenda is continued business 7A, resolution 2023-04, a resolution of the town of Silverton to authorize the expenditure of up to $300,000 for the purposes of applying for CDOT's transformational alternatives grant for the revitalization of Blair Street.
All right, so this resolution is coming back for request for budget in 2024. Since we committed funds in 2023 to this project, but also the transformational affordable housing grant came open. So we decided to spend the funds on that, but we won't know if we're awarded until the end of April for the transformational housing grant. So I asked the board to treat this grant match as kind of a separate grant match, thinking of it, pretend like we already got awarded, so that you can kind of put that in budgeting perspective. And then staff was told by CDOT this month this month, that there's only $3 million available for Southwest Colorado that they're going to be giving out. So we reduced the scope of the grant to 2 blocks from 11th to 13th Street. And this reduced our match amount as well as reflected in the resolution.
And just to clarify, we've been recommended to apply for this from CDOT's encouraged us to apply, but there's no real indication on whether we would be successful.
Correct. We were encouraged to apply for another DOLA grant and we were not successful. So I'm not sure how much encouragement goes, how far it goes.
It would be super cool to see this finally get done. These plans have been kind of, prepared and out there for a minute, and they're very exciting. My question is, if our best case scenario happens where we do actually get awarded this grant and all of the affordable housing work that we're doing comes to fruition in a similar time frame, can we afford to spend all of the funds that we've earmarked for both? Or are we still, because the last time we were talking, it was a one or the other. We had originally allocated the Blair Street grant match, and then that didn't come through, so we reallocated it towards affordable housing. And now we're approving both simultaneously, which it sounds like we're in a good position to manage based on the likelihood of getting one or the other of the timelines. But if they hit at the same time, I'm just wondering, are we still in a comfortable financial position?
Sure. And so this would be, so what we allocated for the transformational housing would be spent this year in this budget cycle, and the Blair Street would be spent next year. So they would be in 2 different budget cycles. There's always, the contingency that we have a horrible summer and we don't have funds and then we don't budget. But if everything goes smoothly, then I think we would have up to $300,000 for this grant match. But that's definitely, that's the gamble that you take with grants.
For sure. Cool. That's what I need. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sally, Jim, or Jeff? Or Jordan?
You asked my question. That was, yeah.
Anytime you're reinvesting, that's exactly what it is. And I'm for this project. I've been for this project originally years ago, and I'm for it now. So I don't have a lot of comments on it, but I would like to see it happen.
I think we've definitely made significant efforts, right? We keep kind of throwing stuff at the wall to see what money will stick or come for this. It's in the master plan. It's been prioritized. A question I always ask in all these things is what are we giving up? It's all fun. It's relatively fungible funds. If we spend this in 2024, what are we potentially not spending on? But this project has been in so many plans. It's in the master plan. It's been prioritized for a long time, and this seems like an opportunity that's come up, and it's proving to be harder to fund a project like this other ways. So maybe this will stick.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I can make a motion to adopt resolution 2023-04, resolution of the town of Silverton to authorize the expenditure of up to $300,000 for the purposes of applying for CDOT's transformational alternatives grant for the revitalization of Blair Street.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Krieger.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Absolutely, yes.
Trustee Bierma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And that was the last item on our agenda. So now we'll move to our closing public comment. If you're on Zoom, please click the raise hand button. And it seems like Melody's already a panelist and has her hand up. So Melody, the floor is yours. Please introduce
Hey,
yourself
This is
again.
Melody. What a shocker. Two things. The Animas River Corridor Plan that was approved several years ago actually needs to be met with whatever's going on with the group that's going to be coming up from Durango. There's a lot of things about river walks and various things that need to be taken care of in town. So don't forget to add that one. The other thing is, Tyler, we have Tri-State that comes up from the south. Years ago, San Miguel put a line in over Ophir. I believe it was San Miguel. And now we have the line that goes over Red. That is San Miguel. So we have redundancy. It's just that there's a few quirky things that happen, and ice falling off of a building onto equipment is certainly a problem. But I did want you to know that I personally feel very good about the electrical redundancy that we've had for quite a while. And thank you for bringing that up, Tyler. It's a great point.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands raised, and we don't have anyone in person, so we'll go ahead and close public comment at this time. We have a bunch of upcoming meetings. 4 o'clock on March 16th, Personnel and Ordinance Committee. We're looking at the Development Readiness Assessment. It's pretty meaty and substantive. Please come and join us in person or on Zoom. Finance Committee meeting on March 20th at 9 a.m. Planning Commission meeting March 21st at 7 p.m. And then our next regular meeting on March 27th at 7 p.m. Thank you all for a very productive and quick meeting. It's 7:59 and I adjourn this meeting. Thanks so much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Gloria.
Yeah.
Our conversation earlier will determine my availability